Good morning, good morning, good morning. We are on Ask the Expert, and I love Ask the Expert because these experts come from the Authors and Speakers Visibility Playground, and we have so much fun there. We even have a business mastermind that is all about referral, and we refer each other. It's a great group, and we do that on Thursdays at 10 a.m. But today I have a very, very special guest, and I can't wait till you hear what it is that we're going to talk about, because so many of us in the Authors and Speakers Visibility Playground are authors, obviously. And a lot of us are nonfiction. I happen to be nonfiction myself. And we've got a really fun thing coming up with regard to a challenge, because I know one of the challenges that authors have is they work so hard on their book. I can't begin to tell you how hard I worked on my book. And it went through 9 edits. 9, count them, 9 edits. 9. Anyway, so when you are going to go to an editor, it really shifts everything, because you find out things about your book that maybe you have to segue from one chapter to another, and you left out that complete segue. You just started on a new chapter without even thinking about how to blend it in from the previous chapter. So I thought I'd bring you an editor so that she could tell you, if you're in the process of preparing a book, how to prepare it for an editor. And she's got some great tips for you, things I hadn't even thought of. And nobody shared these great tips for me. So I'm excited, because I've written 3 more books just during this virus stay-at-home thing. And I know that I'm going to get a lot of tips on how to save money and how to make a difference in the branding before I ever give it to the editor. So I'll be right back. Hang in there with me, and I'll be bringing on our guest. And welcome back. Thank you for your patience. I'm really excited that you're here. And if you love the advice that we give you and the ideas that we share with you for how to really beef up your business and your lifestyle, then please click the like or the subscribe button, and don't forget the bell so that you're notified ahead of time when we have a show coming. So don't forget, all right? Now let's get on with what we are going to talk about. Our guest today has 10 tips that she can give you for evaluating your own manuscript before you ever give it to an editor. But we're only going to get to 5 today. So if you want the other 5, then you're going to want to click the link below that she's going to provide so that we can give you the other 5. Now, this is my very dear friend. I really love having her in my sphere of influence because she is so knowledgeable and she's so loving. She really comes from her heart, like the rest of my community does. And those are the kinds of people that I surround myself with. Now, if you've already written your book and you have it with an editor, you'll be looking in the rearview mirror. But if you want to help yourself in the future, these are the answers for you. And our guest today is cathy.oasheim, and she lives in Florida. She just went through the hurricane and all that kind of stuff that I guess turned out to be just a lot of water again. And she's a life graduate with a Bachelor of Science degree in applied psychology. And she has even been a telecom engineer. Can you believe it? What I love about this is how people evolve into their real talent out of the one that they just used to survive for so long. And the way I met her is because my book won an award with the Next Generation Indie Awards, and she is a judge. So when they did the awards, I got to meet Cathy then. So let's bring her on. She has so much information for you, and I know you're really going to appreciate what she has to say. And if you get to know her, she might even be the perfect editor for you. Cathy, welcome to the show. I'm delighted you're here with us.
Thank you, Dr. Shirlene.
You're certainly welcome. You know, you have so much great information, and I love your energy. It's just so beautiful. So tell our viewers what it is that you think is the most important thing that they need to do before giving their manuscript to an editor.
That's a great question. There's a huge checklist of items, and we could micromanage that to the nth degree, but we won't do that today. We'll just give you some highlights. I think the number one thing is to make sure that the way that you write, every sentence makes sense. Every sentence makes sense in the paragraph. Each paragraph leaves a hanger that leads to the next paragraph. And then that paragraph at the end of all of the paragraphs makes the reader want to turn the page. That's the big deal. We want to write for our readers.
You know, so many people have written and they've got it. It's in, you know, that format that looks like, sort of like this, you know, whoops. Right. And they don't know what to do next. So if they've written, I handwrite every one of my manuscripts because I do it early in the morning. So if they're at that point, what is their next step, would you say, other than getting it into a Word document or something like that?
Great question. Once it's in a Word document, you are going to want to do some word searches. And the first thing you're going to want to do is to check for, there's just some common errors that authors make. Typically, we write the way that we speak. And if I make any grammar errors today, please don't correct me because I'm not working with my mouth. I only work with the pen and the editing. And I say that often to people because they hear I'm an editor and then they start correcting my grammar. So I say I'm not working today.
That would never even occur to me.
So the first word I would check for is a common error is the word had. And I had done, I had been, anything that says had takes you into past tense, and we want to kind of put it into present. So do a word search on the word had. So let's say your manuscript has, I'm going to use the example of 100,000 words because a typical novel manuscript is between 70 and 100,000 words. Oh, that's a tip I didn't mean to share.
And how many pages would that be?
Oh my goodness, I only think in word count, so I want you to think in word count because I'm going to charge you by the word. The more words you can cut out of this, and remember, less is more. So you're going to cut out the word had. How about any word that starts with ly? You're going to go through every single one of those instances. So let's say you've got a document, a manuscript that has 100,000 words, and you do a search for the word had. Let's say you have 3,000 instances. That's a whole lot more than 0.001% of the document. So go through each of those instances and do your homework. Evaluate each use of it. And if you don't know what to do, the next thing to know is to let a style manual be your best friend. Typically, you can't go wrong with the Chicago Manual of Style. It depends on the work, but if you're a novelist, you're doing online blogging, that would be the AP style manual. If you write books, then it's the Chicago Manual of Style. If you write in religious writing, there's style manuals for that, legal writing. So get familiar with your style guide. The more you know the style guide, the less of a job I will have to do. So the Chicago
I've
Manual.
never heard of that. I've never heard of a style guide.
Yes.
And I want to ask you a question. I'll tell you what's really been helping me is Grammarly, because it tells me when I'm in past tense. But sometimes I don't know how to shift that sentence around so that if you're talking about something in the past, like you're telling a story or something like that, how do you shift it? How do you make that happen?
That is a wonderful question. First off, Grammarly is an excellent tool. There are many tools out there, and Grammarly probably is the most popular, I would say, for everyday use. And what they will do is they'll give you feedback, and they'll say, this is a passive noun, or this is a passive verb. Take that terminology and look it up in your Chicago Manual of Style, and the book is about this thick, or you can get an online subscription. Once you do that, you can look up those terminology, passive verbs, and then everything there is to know about a passive verb will be in the Chicago Manual of Style, and it will have sentence examples. Because Grammarly is not, it's generic the way that it gives you feedback. Now, if you get the more advanced versions of that, it helps a little bit more, but I never rely on that. I study like a machine. Grammar, I study my style manuals, and that's a key. Oh, that's another secret. Understand what style manual you need to use, and also make sure that the editor you choose uses the same one. Ask that question.
That's a really good point. So, but nobody wants to, I get that you study it like you do, and you should, because that's your business. And I know most entrepreneurs just say, I just want to write this book. And I've read some pretty bad books. They're the ones when I used to fly got left in the pocket of the airplane. I mean, on the, what do you call them? Where everybody writes in one book.
An anthology.
Anthology,
Yes.
Thank you. I hate those the most because there's no continuity to most of them. They don't have any flow at all. And so I'll usually read the chapter that the person who gave it to me, and then I'm done with it because I just don't have the time. And they give them so freely, I noticed. But there is no continuity to them. So that must be the ultimate non-style type of book. Is that right?
I would agree. And there is a purpose for them, and it's a wonderful purpose if it's done right. And I do specialize in anthologies, but I use it more for nonprofit when there's a theme of telling a story for a cause. Another thing that will help you, another secret, is to outline your novel. Your novel, your non-script, your nonfiction manuscript, everything can be outlined. And then along that line, and then check to make sure that you have written along your lines. And then what I would do would be to read that book out loud to myself. Because when I read it out loud to myself, it's like, oh, I can't believe I wrote that. Because the way our brain works is we see things, we hear things, we touch things. So when we're writing, we're seeing and we're feeling. When we speak it, we hear it. And you can put the tone and the inflection in when you read it back. However, when you write it, it might be a little flat. And if you try to read a flat sentence, it'll stand out. So that's ways to self-edit.
That's a great idea. So when you read it out loud, well, then you can also see what you need to adjust in the sentence structuring too, because you'll find out, oh, that doesn't go with this one. I got to move this paragraph somewhere else. Is that right?
That's exactly right. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's a really good tip. That's an excellent tip. And also about, I wanted to ask you a question. So when you're telling a story, I want to go back to your HADs that you were mentioning. When you're telling your story, and it is in the past, it's already experienced, how do you address that?
Here's an example. The frog had jumped off of the fence every time I walked down to the pond.
Mm-hmm.
The way we reframe that is the frog jumped off of the fence every time I walked, which is past tense, to the pond. Simple as that.
Oh, so you're still telling it in the past tense. So, okay, so what's the difference between passive then and past tense?
Passive is kind of lazy writing. I know it's a judgment, but we want precise, less is more type of writing. So
Okay.
it's too many words. So, like for example, some people who are super analytical will write actually not enough, and then people who are insecure might write too much, and I call it, well, in the world you've heard mansplaining, we call it author-splaining, and you over explain, maybe use too many adjectives for a noun. Passive, you might use too many adverbs. That's where you do a search on your LYs, because the adverbs are a definite clue to passive. So what you want to do is minimize those. They're not illegal. I make up rules, I make up humor to go wrong, to communicate these messages to my authors. I like us to have a sense of humor. I will say LYs are not illegal, but they are highly scrutinized.
Okay.
So, and then I always revert back to less is more, and here's why. And then I'll point to the Chicago manual style.
So much for creative writing then. Because when I took creative writing, you had to have all these expletives that shored up the noun in the story. So you're saying don't do that. It can't be a creative writing style then. Is that right?
It could. And that's a great question, because one thing that hasn't dramatically improved my nonfiction editing is that I actually study fiction as well. And a story is a story is a story. And we have to keep the audience in mind. So if the audience is an audience of attorneys, they're not going to want the flowery language per se, but they might appreciate creative writing. An example of that might be an opening scene of a story. So let's say I'll have the reader, the author, close their eyes to illustrate this. So we'll have our listeners close their eyes. Now I'm going to tell you a story. I was laying in bed, and it was 4 a.m. and my husband, I see I already messed it up. I felt someone sit on my bed. And then my eyes opened. And let's say that's how I wrote it. Okay. When I read it out to myself, it sounds flat.
Yeah.
So let's add drama. The way we add drama is we say, my bed, I felt the impression of a human being sit on the side of my bed. I didn't know who that could be. I looked at my clock. It read 4 a.m. I heard the words, honey, I'm really sick. I need to go to the emergency room. Now you get a story.
Yes.
I've added drama to that. So the way we add drama to nonfiction is we'll add dialogue, perhaps. We let the story tell itself through what other people say. And it's a true story. But maybe in fiction and creative writing, maybe you're writing about animals who speak. And it's the same thing. Just pretend they're humans and we're having a conversation. It's the way our human mind is processed.
Wow. Awesome. Awesome. I love it. Yeah, that's a huge difference is what you're, between the first and the second example.
Yes.
So I love your tips that you're giving us. And why don't you, because in the interest of time, this show goes so fast, give us a couple more tips.
A very important thing is to prepare your manuscript for an editor. The more work you do ahead of time, the more prepared you are, and the better estimate you're going to get, because the editor sees that you put a lot of time and effort into it. Another thing I like for my authors to do is to give, in addition to outlining their novel, what goes hand in hand with that is to give me a character description and where they enter. So give me an outline of what characters enter what scene, and a paragraph about what each chapter is about. That way, when I read your proposal, all I have to do is read that. The wrong thing to do for an author and to ask an editor is, have you read my book yet? Nope, I'm going to read it when I edit it. But I'm going to read the synopsis. So that's what you do. That's why you prepare yourself. And editors love that, because they see how much work you put into it. Another thing, in addition to what I've shared with you, is to, there was one more. Oh, a wisdom outline. Outlining. And when you outline the wisdom, in addition to the characters and everything, with nonfiction, what wisdom are you imparting to the reader that you want that to be a takeaway in that might have them stop in their tracks and think about what you said? Not all nonfiction leads to that. However, that's the psychological aspect to that. And with my psychology background, I can actually, what happens with nonfiction a lot of times is nonfiction authors have a story up here in their head, and I help them get it to their heart by asking questions and interviewing and peeling the layers. I want to see how you peel the layers before you get to me. So by putting those outlines together, it helps me see where you're at, and that you've thought things through enough to where it's a rough draft, but it better be the 6th or 7th or 10th rough draft before I see it. Your mama don't count, because mama doesn't want to hurt your feelings. So join a critique group. Have other people read it. Create a beta group. Find beta readers who just love to do that for free, and will give you feedback. In a book I wrote, I had my beta readers, I did that process. Every single beta reader had a meltdown with the storytelling I was doing in different chapters. Well, that told me my story was good. It was balanced, because it didn't make every single person set the book down at one chapter. But the consistent theme was, this is a page turner. And that was great feedback. Other feedback I got was, this type of writing in this chapter really didn't grab me. I'd work on this. That kind of feedback is gold for an author, and I offer that service as well, managing your beta reader process, and I will teach and coach on that as well.
Wow. Okay. So here's what I think we've learned today. We've learned about the wisdom that we're going to bring into our book. And also we've learned about how to prepare our book in a traditional standard and style. Would that be right?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. And what not to do as an author when you're working with an editor. And in other words, don't ask them, have you read my book? That's not a good thing, because they don't want to read it twice, right?
That's exactly. I don't get paid to read it twice.
Yes.
I will charge you to read it twice.
And then you told us also about the wisdom outline, which I think is really important, and what wisdom that you want to provide your audience in order to take the next steps in their lives. Is that correct?
Yep, that's true.
What did I miss?
Well, we want to make sure that the story flows. So check for common errors. your
Oh, yeah.
hads, your LYs, your VATs, and just do a word search on that. And it takes a lot of time to do that, but a perspective is, look at how long it takes you to do that, and I'm going to charge you to do the same. So you decide. I have authors who say, I do not want to do that, and I will pay you to do that. So I will gladly take care of all their hads and LYs and refine it. And that's my mantra, refining your masterpiece. But the key is you want to find an editor who can edit in your voice. So that's the purpose for those outlines, is I want to see a theme of who you are as an author and what you're trying to say, and help you get to point B, ready to submit your manuscript to an editor and jump in.
So you've given us 5 of your 10 different things that people can look at before they submit to an editor. I want to ask you very quickly, you said you charge by the word. Do all editors do that? That's
an excellent question. And there's actually a freelancers union that we all base our pricing on. And that union, basically, it's a study of the type of work that we do, down to the specialty. And it depends also on the expertise of the editor. A new editor just starting out might charge by the page, or if it's an academic editor, they'll charge by the project. It just depends on their skill set. I used to charge by the page, and it becomes chaotic because the page count changes and the word changes, because I put a lot of things on the cutting room floor. And so it's easier to edit by the word count and charge by the word. And there's a range because there's 3 different types of editing. So the more intense type of editing, where I really touch your story and I rearrange a lot of things, and there's a lot of coaching involved with that, because I interview the author to pull things out and help them remember, because they don't realize they remember it in their head, but they write it too vague. So the interview part is very important with that. That's the highest point. That's the highest charge. So that's usually between 5 and 7 cents a word. So then the next step down, the next phase, is the copy edit or the line edit. And that's where you really work on the grammar and punctuation, and to make sure it's clean. And then the proofread is the last step before it goes to print. So the line edit is typically between it could be between 3 and 4.9 cents a word. And then the proofread can be anywhere from 0.005 to 2 cents a word, depending on the type of manuscript. If there's fact checking, there's a lot of factors that go into raising the price. If it's a brand new author and they have never, it's a discernment, it's a judgment call, and it will cost me a lot of time, then with the interviews and everything I need to accomplish to get that storyline out, I charge on the higher end of the, more like the 5-6 cents for the developmental, because it's going to take me more work to refine it for you. And what happens is, as an author, you will learn so much. And as a new author, a developmental edit is the best thing you can do for yourself, because it will teach you how to have hope. That's what I do. I give you hope so that you don't give up on writing. I want you to keep writing. And because you learn so much by working with an editor that you can work with, that actually picks up the phone, that actually gives you updates and status reports on a constant basis. I don't disappear. And sometimes that's what happens in the big world of publishing. So you learn a lot. And that personal touch gives people courage to keep writing, and they see the value.
So Cathy, how do people get the other 5, the other 5 on your list?
Today, email me this week. My email is Cathy, CATHY, .Oasheim, OASHEIM, at outlook.com, and put in your subject line that you want the free tips, the other free tips. And I will send you a document that has all 10 on it for free.
Is it cathy.oasheim? Did you say that?
Yes, it is.
Okay, good. All right. So you're going to want to go to cathy.oasheim at outlook.com. I put it in there for you. And then just ask her for the other 5 tips. Tell her you saw her on Ask the Expert, and put her subject line information in. And Cathy, I just want to thank you so much for being with us today. And I've learned so much, and I hope everybody else has learned something too.
Thank you. It was a delight.
Okay, Cathy, thank you, and have a great day.
You too.
And I will be seeing you very shortly. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I really appreciate it. If you haven't joined the Authors and the Speakers Visibility Playground, please do, because we're a very active group of heavy hitters making a difference in the world, and you might want to make a difference in the world too. So thank you for joining me. I will see you next Friday, and we will have a new guest on the show from the Authors and Speakers Visibility Playground.